Don't you love YouTube? Don't you love YouTube? This is so annoying. I don't know what's going on, folks. We were just getting through our super chats, and if someone can please post the link to this down below. I hate this. I don't know why this happens, right? It kicks me out of the app, and I just have to restart the app. So here we are. This live is going to be in two parts once again. Whoopie-doo, So there we go. We're still here. I'm not going anyplace. I'm still here. Someone post the link. This is so annoying. I don't know why this happens. I don't know if it's my phone or my Wi-Fi or it's the YouTube app is having problems. I know YouTube had an outage earlier tonight. I was worried that we wouldn't be able to do this live. So annoying. So someone please post the link. Very, 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 very annoying. Here I am, not going anyplace. So anyhow, so the question that I was asked beforehand was, did Khrushchev add to bureaucratic privileges? And what I was saying was that you have to have bureaucratic privilege to some degree or other, right? Because you have to motivate people to take on the responsibility of being a bureaucrat. Most people, if there's no reward for being a bureaucrat, are not going to be a bureaucrat. You have to add some kind of privilege to do it, or else people are not going to want to do it, right? I mean, that's just kind of basic, right? Being a bureaucrat is not a fun job, right? Being a boss is not necessarily fun, right? You're going to have to add some kind of incentive. The question is, how do you prevent that incentive, from becoming, and I've talked about this, the bureaucracy, I've talked about if there's a shortage of bread, you obviously have to ration the bread so everyone gets enough. But then, you're going to have a line of people to line up to get the ration bread. And then you're going to have a guard in the line to make sure no one steals anybody else's bread. But that guard in the line is going to demand that he get a bigger slice of bread because he is not only, he's taking on the responsibility of being the guard. Right? That's bureaucratic privilege. And whenever, you're building socialism on the basis of scarcity, without the development of productive forces, where there's not enough to go around, you're gonna have to have some kind of a bureaucracy, and you're gonna have to give some bureaucratic privilege to people in order to get them to be the bureaucracy. And that's the question that socialist countries have struggled with, right, throughout their existence. How do you make sure that the bureaucracy doesn't, betray the revolution? How do you maintain the political loyalty of the bureaucracy? Stalin did it, Great Terror, purge trials, secret police. Mao did it with the Cultural Revolution, right? And attempts to, mobilize the population to, kick the ass of the bureaucracy, force them to stay true to the revolutionary line. Socialist countries now do it by having a market sector and restricting the bureaucracy only to the trusted, politically loyal people, and having a market sector for people that just want to be careerists. So there are different ways of trying to control the bureaucracy, but that's a problem in any socialist society. You are going to need a bureaucracy, and you're going to have to give that bureaucracy some bureaucratic privilege. The question is, how do you keep control of that bureaucracy? This is the problem of socialism in the 20th century. It's worth noting, though, that in the overthrow of socialism, do you think capitalism murders spirituality? Okay. In the overthrow of socialism, often the people that are mobilized to overthrow socialism are bureaucrats themselves, or the children of the bureaucracy. The dissidents of Eastern Europe were not factory workers. They were not, farmers. The people that marched in the Prague Spring or to overthrow socialism were the children of the most privileged people in the country. They were the children of the most privileged people in the country, and they were mobilized. They were mobilized because they wanted more privilege. They thought that their bureaucratic privilege was restricted. They were convinced that if the country had capitalism, not only would they get a bigger house and a bigger car than everybody else, but they'd also be able to shop at Walmart and buy Beatles albums and wear blue jeans, and that a lot of the motivation for the young dissidents of the USSR, it wasn't just that they wanted more freedom. They also were convinced that because of the socialist system, their ability to have bureaucratic privilege was restricted. So, it's weird. People make the color revolutions look like they were like popular revolts by the whole population. It was the intellectuals, the college professors, the writers, the scientists, those were the people that were doing that. And they had very legit grievances about feeling stifled by the socialist system. But those are also people that had a privileged position relative to the rest of the population. So it's complicated. The revolutions, or you want to call them that, the color revolutions, the counter revolutions, the overthrow of socialism in Eastern Europe, you know, it it really was the most privileged people who were mobilized to carry it out. And on the one hand, they wanted more freedom and they felt stifled by the socialist system. On the other hand, though, they wanted more stuff, and they wanted their privileged position to expand. So it's complicated. It's complicated. There's plenty we can learn from the fall of the Soviet Union, I think. And as I'm working on this book on the synthetic left, I'm realizing this is very much turning into a book about the fall of the Soviet Union, because you can't separate the fall of the Soviet Union from the Congress for Cultural Freedom. You can't separate the fall of the Soviet Union from George Soros. It's like all the distortion of leftist politics that I'm always ranting and raving about on these lives is very much a huge factor in the fall of the Soviet Union. This is all connected. So, there you go. Capitalism murders spirituality, question mark. Well, I mean, there are plenty of people in the United States that are spiritual, and the USA is very capitalist. There's plenty of people in the developing world that are capitalist. Karl Marx said that religion was the heart of a heartless world and the soul of soulless conditions, the opium of the people. And he argued that it was capitalism that produces religion because people are suffering and they need consolation. Now, feudalism, religion was the institution. The church propped it up. Capitalism, on the other hand, involved a lot of overthrowing feudalism. The Protestant Reformation was the beginning, in many cases, of the capitalist revolution. It was the capitalist class asserting itself, breaking free from the Catholic Church. The French Revolution was an atheist revolution for a while, and then restored Catholicism, as we talked about earlier with Napoleon. But most capitalist societies have religion as a factor, but they have some degree or other of separation of church and state. I know in England they still have the Church of England, but it's like they have religious freedom too. And that, and like a lot of European countries, they have a state church, but it's not like mandatory. It's not forced on people. There's a huge amount of religious freedom and religious diversity. So it's complicated. Many people have talked about how religion is distorted by capitalism, right? Joel Osteen is a great example. He's on TV 24 hours a day. I swear. It could be 3 a.m. I could turn my TV on. There'd be Joel Osteen. Hi, I'm going to start with a joke. What do you call a newspaper? Yeah, I don't know. Joel Osteen, he starts with a joke, and then he stands there and reads from a teleprompter that, it's like a self-help Norman Vincent Peale, go out and achieve your dreams and work hard. It has nothing to do with religion. It's just stupid capitalist success cult stuff. But, so it doesn't look like spirituality to me. It looks like capitalism, right? It looks like capitalist self-help guru, believe in yourself, work hard stuff, right? So maybe that's capitalism murdering spirituality. I don't know. Many people have talked about how capitalism motivates people to work in an immoral way. It's important to note, and I've said this many times, that, the right-wing critique of capitalism predates the left-wing critique of capitalism. No one talks about this. On the right wing, they insist Hitler must have been a leftist because he was a National Socialist. Well, Hitler was a rightist, and he was critical of capitalism from the right, right? There's a whole tradition in Europe of right-wing criticism of capitalism, and the first institution to criticize capitalism from the right was the Roman Catholic Church. They thought that capitalism was a threat to the feudal order. Capitalism motivated people to do immoral things. People that owned businesses, they were just in it to make a profit. They weren't serving their natural superiors. And the Catholic Church banned the lending of money at interest, and it was a sin, usury. In fact, there's a reason they used to call money filthy lucre, right? It was considered a sin to touch money in the Catholic Church at one point. Just touching money was a sin, right? Money was considered to be impure and sterile. You can read about this, and that the Roman Catholic Church, long before there was any criticism of capitalism from the left and the revolutionary movement, there was a right-wing critique. And then later you have, on the right, the development of, oh my goodness, The Decline of the West. Who wrote that? What is his name? I can't remember his name. The right-wing thinker. His name is escaping me. Oh, Jesus, what is his name? This very right-wing thinker, Oswald Spengler, right? And Oswald Spengler, he wrote this book, The Decline of the West. It's a right-wing book, a right-wing authoritarian book, but it's arguing that capitalism is bad because it makes people want to do their own thing and not be loyal to the nation and loyal to hierarchy and authority and tradition, right? Oswald Spengler, big influence on the Nazis, big influence on Italian fascism, big influence on a lot of right-wing movements. You have Julius Evola, who was in Italy and was basically became famous because of the Italian fascist state, criticizing capitalism from the right. There is criticism of capitalism from the right. So when you take capitalism killing spirituality, I'm sure the Catholic Church thought that. I'm sure Oswald Spengler thought that. I'm sure Julius Evola thinks that. They thought it from the right. Communists want to free humanity from hierarchy. As I read earlier from the Communist Manifesto and from Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific, the idea is to build a society so egalitarian and so free and so prosperous that there is no coercion and no state. And there is total equality and liberation. Well, the right-wing critique of capitalism is that capitalism tears apart all the traditional rules and authority, right? And that capitalism plays a very liberal role, right? Capitalism comes in there and says, hey, as long as you can make a buck, you're fine, right? Capitalism says we're not going to have a king, we're going to have an elected government. Capitalism says, hey, if you can sell, right? Capitalism makes lots of money from pornography. Capitalism makes lots of money from, all kinds of things that a deeply conservative traditional person might object to, right? And that the right-wing critique of capitalism is that, yes, it's getting rid of tradition and spirituality and the natural order, right? And that a lot of the far right kind of want to restore feudalism, or they want to hold on to aspects of traditional society that are feudal. Whereas the left, their goal is to eventually get to a world with so much abundance that all forms of hierarchy can fade and go away. And this is where Jordan Peterson and people like that are they don't understand this, but you can't respond to this. This is the thing. If you don't have dialectical materialism, you can't respond to this, right? Dialectical materialism, and historical materialism, I should say, gives us an understanding that things like hierarchy, things like authoritarianism, they are rooted in the mode of production. And this, if you don't have this understanding, you can't really engage with people on the right, right? So here we go. Classic example, right? People say, the West is the best, right? That's the Proud Boys, that's Vosh. The West is the best. It's the most free. It's amazing, The West is amazing. And why is the West amazing? They'll tell you, we invented natural law and human, the rights of man, and no one... Well, here's the thing. It's true. Nobody in the world had ever talked about human rights or the rights of man or freedom of speech or freedom of assembly or freedom of religion until about the 1400s in Europe. Why? Right? If these things are, as they call them, natural rights that everyone is just born with, were people evil for the overwhelming majority of their existence? They just thought of this in the 1400s? People were evil. For all of human history, the Roman Empire, Greek Empire, people were just evil. They didn't recognize people had natural rights. And then in the 1400s, somebody said, hey, natural rights. And then we became good, right? Humans were evil until... No. That the rise of concepts like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and natural rights came with a mode of production that could accommodate that. Until the level of abundance and stability in society developed to the point that could facilitate that level of freedom, it was not possible. Feudalism is a society based on subsistence farming. Try running a society based on that level of scarcity, subsistence farming, with everyone thinking whatever they want, saying whatever they want, doing whatever they want. It wouldn't work, right? The reason feudalism, a system where you're farming to survive, basically, has, this really, really authoritarian setup where, serfs are like the property of the landowner and you can get killed for saying the wrong thing, committing heresy, speaking against. The reason is because out of economic necessity, for human beings to survive, they had to have that kind of tight discipline, right? And the concept of natural rights and human rights develops as society gets to the point that there's enough abundance created that we don't need that rigid hierarchy that we once had. So, why are the socialist countries very authoritarian? Communists are evil, Caleb. They're evil, and we believe in freedom in the West. Well, go to any third world capitalist country. Just as authoritarian. When countries are impoverished and unstable, they become authoritarian. When they raise up out of poverty and develop abundance, they become more open. Right? That you cannot separate liberty and freedom from the economic base. And that the West, the United States, the United Nations really, the religion of the West is human rights. And they argue that all societies in all history should have the exact same level of human rights. Well, that would be nice. I want maximum human rights. I want maximum freedom of speech, maximum freedom of assembly. I want that. Rights are good. But you have to understand that all of human history has not had the same level of development. Right? I would like there to be so much human rights and so much freedom that the need for a government goes away. The need for prisons and police goes away. That we have so much abundance that people can just do what they feel like doing and take what they need from each according to his own ability, to each according to his needs. That's only possible in a very high level of development. And that's the ultimate goal of communism. This is called historical materialism. Okay? And so Jordan Peterson, right? There's a very famous video of him talking about lobsters. Lobsters have hierarchies. And well, here's the thing that he doesn't get. He says, hierarchies are in our DNA. Lobsters have hierarchies. Humans have hierarchies. We all have serotonin. And of course, hierarchies are in our DNA. Human beings are a species that is collective, right? We're not tigers on our own in the middle. We're collective. We survive by working in groups. We survive by working in groups. And part of the way that we build these groups that we survive by working in, it's built in our DNA that out of necessity, we can form hierarchies in those groups out of necessity. But you'll notice that the hierarchies that existed in hunter-gatherer tribes were very different than the hierarchies that existed in Greece and Rome and slave societies. And those hierarchies were very different than the hierarchies that existed in feudalism. And the hierarchy that exists in capitalism is a completely different form of hierarchy. And that as we move towards socialism, and as we move toward vast material abundance, the need for hierarchy will break down. That's the idea, right? And that, yes, human beings naturally create hierarchies. Do you think that a socialist government can emerge in Chile, Ecuador, Brazil in the next elections? I think so. It's possible. Yeah, I mean, at this point, the pink tide is riding high. Bolivia, right? And Venezuela is standing strong. Nicaragua. I think it could happen. In Chile, there's so much unrest there. The people are very unhappy. I think it could very well happen. But this is where you need historical materialism to understand these things. If you don't have historical materialism, you can't understand this, right? And that, the capitalists want to sit there and argue, your society doesn't have the right amount of human rights. They want to sit there, Jordan Peterson's like, well, hierarchy is just natural. Well, of course it's just natural, right? But hierarchies change, right? As is pointed out, you could say that in response to anything, right? The time of slavery was going on, right? Someone could have said, hey, slavery is screwed up. We don't need to have slavery. And they'd say, hierarchy is natural. Look at lobsters. You could say that in response to any hierarchy, right? Is that hierarchies, yes, are natural, but as conditions change, so do hierarchies. And that hierarchies won't be necessary. The goal is to create a society with an economic base that makes hierarchy unnecessary. And this is the problem that these folks don't get. If you take the economics and the materialism out of Marxism, and you turn Marxism into an ideology that just says everyone should be equal or something, and racism is bad, the synthetic left strips Marxism of its economics. Right? They use some of the writings of Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci. He says that he's a critic of what they call economic determinism, which, I mean, there's a criticism there. So because of that, you strip Marxism. You just strip Marxism of economics. And as a result, Marxism turns into this, like, everyone should be equal, all hierarchy is bad kind of belief system. And that doesn't answer the big questions, right? And so you need historical materialism to address that. Now, as far as Latin America is concerned, I think it's very possible that Latin America can continue to go left. I mean, they're going to have to, right? China is a big influence, and China is the main trading partner, and the USA, I mean, has done pretty horrendously, and I think it's very possible that Latin America could continue to move left. But listen, folks, it's late. I really enjoy answering your questions. I always have a great time doing these lives. Really a pleasure. Thanks for being with us. Our community is on the move. We're going to have a patrons-only stream in the next few days, so keep that in mind. I'm glad you're all here. And on that note, folks, I think we're going to call it off here. I think we're going to end the night here. I'm glad we could have a nice long one tonight. Thanks, everyone, for being with us. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. The link for the Patreon is down below. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, the people of all countries must get prepared. Revolution is the main trend in the world today. On that note, folks, I'm out. Have a lovely evening. Talk to you soon.